breakfast, gave me car fare and lunch money as if I were going to work. She comprehended the perversity of life, that in the struggle lies the joy. That I was no glory seeker was obvious to her, and that I had to exhaust every possibility before giving in was also clear. On my way out of the house one morning, she said, "Life is going to give you just what you put in it.
Take a look at this.
Put your whole heart in everything you do, and pray. Then you can wait." Another time she reminded me that God helps those who help themselves. She had a store of aphorisms which she dished out as the occasion demanded. Strangely, as bored as I was with cliches, her inflection gave them something new, and set me thinking for a little while at least. Later, when asked how I got my job, I was never able to say exactly. I only knew that one day, which was tiresomely like all the others before it, I sat in the railway office, ostensibly waiting to be interviewed. The receptionist called me to her desk and shuffled a bundle of papers to me. They were job application forms. She said they had to be filed in triplicate. I had little time to wonder if I had won or not, for the standard questions reminded me of the necessity for dexterous lying. How old was I? List my previous jobs, starting from the last held, and go backward to the first. How much money did I earn, and why did I leave the position? Give 2 references, not relatives. Sitting at a side table, my mind and I wove a cat's ladder of near truths and total lies. I kept my face blank, an old art, and wrote quickly the fable of Marguerite Johnson, aged 19, former companion and driver for Mrs. Annie Henderson, a white lady in Stamps, Arkansas. I was given blood tests, aptitude tests, physical coordination tests, and Rorschachs. Then, on a blissful day, I was hired as the first Negro on the San Francisco streetcars. Mother gave me the money to have my blue serge suit tailored, and I learned to fill out work cards, operate the money changer, and punch transfers. The time crowded together, and at an end of days I was swinging on the back of the rackety trolley, smiling sweetly and persuading my charges to step forward in the car, please.
84.
For one whole semester, the streetcars and I shimmied up and scooted down the sheer hills of San Francisco. I lost some of my need for the black ghetto's shielding sponge quality as I clanged and cleared my way down Market Street with its honky-tonk homes for homeless sailors, past the quiet retreat of Golden Gate Park and along closed, undwelled-in-looking dwellings of the Sunset District. My work shifts were split so haphazardly that it was easy to believe that my superiors had chosen them maliciously. Upon mentioning my suspicions to Mother, she said, "Don't worry about it. You ask for what you want, and you pay for what you get. And I'm going to show you that it ain't no trouble when you pack double." She stayed awake to drive me out to the car barn at 4:30 in the mornings, or to pick me up when I was relieved just before dawn. Her awareness of life's perils convinced her that while I would be safe on the public conveyances, she wasn't about to trust a taxi driver with her baby. When the spring classes began, I resumed my commitment with formal education. I was so much wiser and older, so much more independent, with a bank account and clothes that I had bought for myself, that I was sure that I had learned and earned the magic formula which would make me a part of the gay life my contemporaries led.
Now, this is, I think, a fascinating little cutting for a number of reasons. Let's finish, by the way, at level 1. Notice she keeps going back and going back and going back. Persistence, assiduity. There's our vocab word. Assiduity. To not give up. Keep going back. Keep going back. Keep going back. Finally, fine, here's some forms. Fill out the forms. She, of course, has to not let them know that she's so young. She has to pretend that she's much older. She fills out the forms. She goes through all the tests. And finally, she's hired. Notice that once she's hired then, she's ready to go to work. She works only for a short period of time, and then she goes back to school. It's like this was an experience in her life that was a part of her overall education. Let's now make an observation or two about the importance of mother. Shall we? Let's point out the role that her mother plays. I want to go back to page 83. It's during this period, read it with me, 3 lines from the top of the page. It's during this period, and this will be, by the way, significant for a lot of sophomores, because seniors will often tell me that one of the things that made the sophomore year so important, looking back, had nothing really to do with sophomore school year. It had to do with social. For example, read this line. She says, during this period of strain, Mother and I began our first steps on the long path towards mutual adult admiration. What do we mean by that? In other words, she says it was during this time that my mother and I began to have a different relationship. We weren't like when I was a child anymore. The adult in my life started to recognize I was maturing, I was growing up, I was becoming somehow a peer, a colleague, an equal, of a kind. Notice Mother continues to give support. She comprehended the perversity of life, that in the struggle lies the joy. Let's write that line down. In the struggle, write that line down at level 1. In the struggle lies the joy. That I was no glory seeker was obvious to her, and that I had to exhaust every possibility before giving in was also clear. In the struggle lies the joy. Finally, she's hired, and then over on to page 84. When it looks like they're kind of messing with her, when it looks like they're kind of giving her the worst rotations of the job, for example, at 4:30 in the morning, her mother's only response on page 84 is, notice, don't worry about it. You ask for what you want, you pay for what you get, and I'm going to show you that it ain't no trouble when you pack double. In other words, this mother's got these cliches, but she says the way she kind of said these cliches somehow made sense. In other words, be happy, grateful for what you've got, and go to work with what you got. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Go to work. Stand up for yourself and go to work. We finished this cutting by her return to education, but she says when she went back to school, she was somehow changed, altered. Think about that as a sophomore. How are you a different person from a year of school a year ago when you were a freshman? You see the world differently. You think differently. Of course, for most sophomores, they begin the process of freedoms, learning to drive, learning to have some of those experiences, which allow for them to somehow start to think differently about who they are, possibly getting a job, possibly going out and earning some money, beginning to think about the future. All right, let's jump to 2A really quickly. What's a major message or theme here? There are several possible. One, of course, is prejudice only changes when we change. Think about that. Prejudice is a product of the old generation. Did you notice, by the way, that she symbolically equates old San Francisco with some of those old prejudices? And the only way that prejudice will ever change is when we change. When we challenge, when we live with a view of humans that is more holistic, more inclusive, more loving, more compassionate. Number 2, the only way to get what you want is to want what you get. To go to work. To find the courage to accomplish what you want. Of course, it's a 2-part dance, isn't it? 1, you got to know what you want, and then 2, you got to be willing to go out and get it. You can't sit, you can't wait for it to be given to you. And when no is the first response, as the great sales line goes, the selling only begins when the customer says no. It's at that moment your character comes to the fore and who you are. Finally, number 3. We are in large measure a product of the people who raised us, who showed us. And if we live, for example, with people as we were young, who got up every morning and went to work and worked hard and kept their money to share it with us, for example, as kids, that's a powerful model. And it tells us, it informs us, that's our trajectory, that's our goal. Hard work is the only way to get what you really want, which, by the way, is not a job. Notice in this cutting, it's not the job in the end for my Angelou. It's the pride, the self-pride in knowing, I did this, I accomplished this. That means something to her, and that informs her education as well, her studies as well. Because in the end, it's all challenge, isn't it? And it's the ability to try and figure out how you're going to overcome those challenges. What is for you at 2B the most important elements of this autobiography. Notice, what is the pivotal moment in this text for you? What is the author's perspective? Many have seen that what this shows in a young Angelou was what she was like when she was older, and that is a fierce belief. I would write the word fierce down. A fierce belief in love and justice. And Angelou lived her whole life with that fierce belief in love and justice. That is to say, you must have compassion, but you also have to know what is right and be willing to stand up against what is wrong. Namely, of course, bias or prejudice. At 3A, what is for you the text that says keep going? Of course, jot down really quickly, how does this text work rather nicely with the Cox text, Swimming to Antarctica? Obvious overcoming challenges or things that are in your way, obstacles. What is for you the text that informs you that when people, for example, think less of you for some reason, they are prejudiced against you? It can be for any number of reasons, that you got to keep going, that you got to find a way to rise to the occasion, to be more, to be better, to be fierce in your love and your compassion, but also fierce in your sense of justice and what is right. What is that text for you that motivates you? So, for example, if you're having a bad day, this is the text you go to. It might be a game you play. It might be a video you watch. It might be a song that you listen to. What is the song on your playlist that says, when the challenges come, stand up and go to work. Don't give in. Don't quit. Finally, at 3B, what is your moment in your life so far when you identify that you had to stand up against injustice? What is that moment for you? Have you had that moment yet where you recognize something was wrong and you knew it was wrong and you stood up against it? How'd that go for you? What was the moment in your life thus far when you actually had to grapple against prejudice? Somebody was prejudiced against you for any number of reasons. Your age, your gender, your skin color, your religious preferences or lack thereof. Any number of other reasons why somebody might look down on you or at you. And how did you respond to that? Did you have a powerful positive response or a negative response? If you could go back and change it, how would you change it? What's been the learning curve for you in that regards? Finally, we would be remiss, and I think Maya Angelou would argue, if you're going to read this passage, you have to think about mom. You have to think about the adults in your life. Who is the adult in your life that has said to you, oh honey, you cannot quit? I mean, just because there's a challenge here, you can't quit. Some of you are raised in a house where you were told, if you go out for the sport, you are there for the whole season. That is to say, you finish what you start. Who are those adults in your life who, up to this point, and now that you're a sophomore, you can begin to kind of assess how vital these people have been in your life. Who are those people in your life that have said to you, keep going, keep working, you can do this, who have supported you? They've been honest, like mom was honest to her daughter Maya. They maybe are honest. They are going to tell you the way it is, and yet at the same time, when you say no, I'm going to go for this, they are there to support you. Of course, think about this. When you try to go and challenge yourself and you're successful, that is a message to the people who raised you. I can take care of myself. You did a good job raising me. I'm okay. And as I get older and I get ready to leave home, I'm going to be okay. Can you imagine what it's like to be your significant other, parent, mother, father? Laying in bed at night as you're a sophomore wondering, in 2 more years, they're ready to start thinking about graduating from high school and being gone. Are they going to be ready? Are they going to be ready to live in a world that won't always just fully accept them? I hope I'm doing the right thing as a parent. Your ability to live a good life is a message to your parent that says, you did well. Even with all of the mistakes, even with all the screw-ups, you did well. And I'm going to show you that I can do it. I can make it on my own. Maya Angelou, in some ways then, in this passage from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, let's put this on our notes at 2B, this is a tribute passage. We're going to see a number of these in our sophomore year. Tribute passage. In other words, let me tell you about how amazing my mom was. She helped me to get through a situation in my life where I stood up and I fought. And she was there to support me, to love me, right? Getting up in the early morning hours to take her daughter to work, right? Some of us, as ball players, as athletes, we have to admit, the only reason that we're ball players in high school is because somebody got in a van and drove us all over the place. Took us places. Gave us opportunities, right? Well, there you go. An introduction to Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I hope that you'll pick up the whole book and read it. It's an amazing autobiography. Thank you.